if you want to say something bad about Bela Fleck, we can turn off the recording right now, and you can tell me, and then we'll put the recording back on. I'm turning it off right now. Let's do that. It's stopped recording.
Welcome to Something Came from Baltimore. My name is Tom Gouker, and I will be your host. Something Came from Baltimore is a jazz, blues, and R&B podcast and radio show, and it's not really about Baltimore. Believe it or not, Something Came from Baltimore is free. It doesn't cost you anything to subscribe and to listen to. Today, we're chatting about a new recording called Between Dreaming and Joy from the multi-instrumentalist and educator Jeff Coffin. If you're a fan of Bela Fleck and the Flecktones, then you have already heard Jeff Coffin's work as one of the Flecktones. Jeff Coffin clocked in 14 years with the amazing Wooten Brothers and Bela Fleck. Currently, Jeff Coffin is working with the Dave Matthews Band, and he's clocked in 14 years with that band also. He's just released a new great album. After the first listen, I was hooked, and I wanted to chat with him immediately, and I got the chance. The album is called Between Dreaming and Joy, and the release date is August 26, 2022 on the Earup Records. Before we get into the interview with Jeff Coffin, let's sample a track from the album, Between Dreaming and Joy. The song is called Busting Out All Over.
When I first heard this album, I guess we're starting here. Jeff Coffin, welcome to Something Came from Baltimore.
Thank you, sir.
Let's start this. When I heard this album, the very first time I heard it, I'm like, yes, I need to interview, because this album was a little different than most of the jazz recordings that I'm hearing recently. It's very playful in some ways. It's very percussive and has a world music vibe. It's almost like Dave Matthews, if he wanted to record vocals on top of it, it'd be a really cool album of his, so you might want to recommend that.
There you go. Not a bad idea.
The album's done, Dave. Just put some lyrics to it. This is a summer record. This is something that would be great with the windows down, the blaring. It would be connected to summer. Summer sucked for a lot of people in America with it being so hot and so crazy, and
Right.
People couldn't travel because of expenses and flights being canceled everywhere. So maybe this will extend their summer in a good way, for the fall.
Maybe fall will now be like summer is supposed to be. So, it'll be a fall record.
Yeah. Fall is the new summer.
Fall is the new summer. I like that.
So, I have every single Bela Fleck album with you guys.
Oh, nice.
Do you ever look at each other and look at them and say, dude, I think we're making history here. I think this is clicking in.
Well, I don't know that we ever thought like that. I think that we realized that what we were doing was unique and special and meaningful to a lot of people. But I don't know that any musician really thinks that way, quite honest. Well, except for maybe Kanye, but
Yeah, he's making art every single day.
What are you doing? But I think we're all confident musicians, but also, we're just making music that happened to hit on a certain level with a lot of people. It's kind of like Snarky Puppy. Snarky Puppy didn't get into it to become popular. They got into it because they loved the music they were making.
Yeah.
And I think that's infectious with other people. And look, man, there's a lot of great music out there that doesn't really get its due. And when it happens, you got to be grateful for it and ride it as long as you can. And, for me, I've been really fortunate. I think I've had the best 2 gigs of my generation.
Yeah.
And with Bela and now with Dave Matthews. I've been with Dave now for 14 years. And so that's basically been my entire career. I moved to Nashville in 91, Started playing with Bela in '97. I was doing studio work and live stuff, and my own stuff here previous to that. And knock on wood, man, it continues, and I'm able to continue on for another 10 or 15 years doing what I'm doing.
If you want to say something bad about Bela Fleck, we can turn off the recording right now, and you can tell me, and then we'll put the recording back on. I'm turning it off right now. Let's do that. It's stopped recording.
Man, there's nothing I could ever say about that man that would be derogatory in any way. I'll tell you, man. I've had like the best two leaders I can possibly imagine. Well, I remember when I first joined the Flecktones, the audience knew the music better than I did. And I remember the first gig we did was up in Vermont. And, we're on the way up there. We'd had a couple of really short rehearsals. And I was like, oh, God, I'm so out of my league here. Mm-hmm. And we did a couple of rehearsals, again, short ones. And then we're up, we're going on the bus. I'm like looking through the music, listening. I was like, Bela, I said, how am I going to know when to solo? He's like, just look at me. He says, I'll nod to you. God, really? Okay. So I remember, and I've told the story a couple of times. After the first gig, I talked to him and I said, "Hey, man," I said, I can't tell you how much I appreciate this opportunity. And I said, "But I'm cool to go home on a bus tomorrow." He was like, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "Man," I said, "you guys are in such a different league." And I said, your audience knows the music better than you do. I mean, better than I do, rather. And I said, I don't want to hold this group back, And he said, dude, it sounded great. He says, for the first gig, that was astonishing, He said, go back and listen to the tapes. He said, and get some rest. I'll see you tomorrow. And here's the other thing, too, that with Bela, like, the music is very intricate. It's in weird keys because it's banjo keys. And it wasn't music that I was used to playing harmonically or rhythmically. A lot of stuff is in odd meter, meaning it's not in 4 beats per bar, etc. And we would go over stuff over and over. And he was so patient, man. I can't even tell you. I'd be like, hey, can we do that again? He'd be like, of course, man. Yeah, whatever you want. Uh-huh. So that process, really showed me a lot about patience and how to learn things, kind of the process of it all. And that's, I think, one of the most important things is that to realize that we're all in process. Regardless of what we're doing, we're all in process, and we all work through conflict. And when we're in conflict, or when someone else is in conflict, you need to have compassion for yourself or for other people also, and realize that, hey, man, they're in conflict. How can I help? Service. Mm-hmm. You dig?
Yeah. Do you ever get called Scott from Anthrax?
Yes.
You get it all the time? Okay.
Sometimes.
Flea from Red Hot Chili Peppers?
Never Flea.
Never Flea. A young Steve Swallow.
Oh, no, but that's interesting.
He had a punky vibe in the 80s. You got to look at some of his pictures. He looked, yeah, he was a rebel.
Playing. Man, Carla Bley is one of my very favorites. Her music, that trio is just astonishing.
I realized all these guys were bass players that kind of look like you. So that's
kind of weird, right?
Yeah, a little weird. Bass players have that look, a certain look.
I hope you're enjoying the interview with multi-instrumentalist, former Flecktone, current Dave Matthews Band member, Jeff Coffin, and we will get back to that interview in 1 minute. Remember to subscribe, play, and share the podcast. We want you all to be a part of that Be More Music scene. If you love the Beatles, and I don't know who doesn't, well, we have a sister podcast called The Beatles Come To America. It's a limited run podcast, about 25 shows, with my co-host, Beatle Guru, Brooke Halpin. We turn back the clock and we review all the U.S. album releases, which were different than the current ones that you're listening to now. 65, Something New, and Yesterday, Today, and Hey Jude. Don't forget to check out thebox.com. It's more music and more talk. The Patreon is out. We're through with it, but Venmo's and Cash App is in. We love it. Now, let's get back to the interview with my guest, Jeff Coffin.
Okay, we're going to get into the record. The album's called Between Dreaming and Joy. The release date is August 26th. It's on the Earup Records. And I'm hearing things on this album, and I hope I'm able to like say, hey, I hear this, I hear that. Eddie the Crow. Oh, I said to me, in my mind, this is the Brecker Brothers produced by Bill Laswell. And then DJ Logic just takes that song to another level. It's a great song. We're going to play a segment of this song, but can you speak on that at all?
Yeah, so this is the only co-write on the record. There's a friend of mine, Alex Clayton, who's a young drummer, lives in Philly now, and he was living in Nashville for a while, and we got to know each other. He wanted to do an interview with me while he was at Belmont University, and so I took him to lunch, and we talked, and just became really great friends, you know. So we're talking about, you know, let's hang out, let's write a tune together. And so he was just kind of sitting down on the drums, and I came up with this melody. We recorded it, and just got the idea out. And then when it came time to record it, I got these guys in to record it. DJ Logic I've known Logic for a long time, and we've worked together numerous occasions and recorded. And I just thought, wow, he'd be great on this tune, and I wasn't wrong. He just brings such an interesting vibe to it, you know, rhythmically and sonically, and he never gets in the way, but he also leads, you know. You know, I played pretty much every instrument that I own, and because I was doing it all remotely, I could really take my time and go, oh, does this fit? Does this fit? And kind of go from there.
Was this a pandemic record, more or less, where you had the more free time?
Definitely. The title track was the first tune I wrote during the pandemic.
It's interesting how this is more of an uplifting, upbeat album in a time of pandemic, but the title song, Between Dreaming and Joy, was so you start off with that ice cream truck, which is awesome. I hear summertime, and the living is easy.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I hear No Diggity. Hey, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh. Like in there. And then you do a break where I hear Duke Ellington's East St. Louis To Do. I hear the Steely Dan version. I don't really hear the Duke Ellington one. But do you hear any of that stuff?
No, I don't. But I love that you do. You know?
Yeah, isn't that cool?
I love that it sparks a lot of these different things. You know?
Yeah.
It's like that boo boo bo dee dee bo do bo bo do bo bo do da part to me is it's unusual for me to write something like that in particular. It almost kind of like when I hear it, I'm like, oh, that's kind of like, and I don't mean to even speak my name with his name, but it's almost kind of like a Brian Wilson moment. Like I hear it and I'm like, oh, harmonically, it's got this kind of thing that you might hear in a Brian Wilson tune.
belly of the whale is in the background is Manteca from Dizzy Gillespie.
Well, that's the percussion, Bernardo Aguiar from Brazil, and he put on I want to say it's like 23 tracks of percussion.
Yeah,
he's insane, and I've known him for years. He plays a lot with my buddy Carlos Malta with Pife Moderno, this fife and drum band out of Rio. It's just extraordinary. I tell people it's like when I listened to his tracks, it was like if you pulled the earth apart and stuck your head in, that was what you would hear.
we got one more to go, and it's Ruthie. Your flute sounds to me like Memphis Underground by Herbie Mann.
I think it's beautiful, man. It's like, it harkens to me a quote from Ornette Coleman. It said, "All listeners are equal in their opinions." I really love, It's like when you go and you go to a museum and you see art, and you'll see something in there that the artist, didn't necessarily think like, oh, this is what it is. But I mean, those influences are there. I was a big fan of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and for what she stood for and who she was, the inspiration that she gave to so many people, especially so many young women. And so that was right around the time that she passed.
You go, Jeff Coffin. Thank you very much for joining me today on Something Came from Baltimore.
I hope you enjoyed the interview today with Jeff Coffin, and I totally agree with his evaluation. Between Dreaming and Joy is a jam. It's awesome. You are going to love it. The show is over. Have a great day.